And it is Strome up top now to Chikrin. And a puck to the side in front. They score! A tip on the right side that is put home by Alex Ovechkin. It is his second of the game, 31st of the year, and 9:28 in his fabulous career. The insurance goal intact. It's 5-3 Washington.
So you're saying there's a chance, Max? Because everybody in front of them lost. They got a shot. You know, here's what people are focused on with respect to the Caps playoff spot, possibility. I say this is what people are focused on. I have no idea what people are focused on. Literally have no idea. But this is what I'm guessing because I've been more focused on the second wild card spot. Columbus with 88 points. The Caps now have 85 points. The Caps finish with Columbus. Last game of the year is Columbus at home. The Caps have been playing exceptionally well. They've won their last three. They're scoring a lot of goals. Ovechkin with 2 last night in the 6-4 win over Philadelphia, a team that was in front of them. And now the Caps are just 1 point behind the Flyers, 1 point behind Detroit, 1 point behind Ottawa, who are all, along with Washington, chasing Columbus with 88 for the last wild card spot. But the number 3 spot in the Metropolitan Division is still alive. The Islanders have 89 points. They've lost 2 in a row, including last night. And the Caps are just 4 points behind New York. And one of the teams in front of them is Columbus. And they play Columbus at the end of the year. I mean, in many ways, I am guessing this to be true, that if they were to win out, they'd be in the playoffs. They have 7 games left. If you add another 14 points to their situation right now, they're in the postseason if they win out. Do you agree with that or not?
I mean, if they win out, yeah, but it's going to be really tough because
I bet if they go 6-1 down the stretch, they make it as either the third team in the Metropolitan or the second wild card team.
Because they've got the Penguins ahead of them. The Devils are sitting behind them. The Sabres are red hot right now. So they have 2 games against the Penguins and then the Rangers and Leafs, who have a really down year for both those franchises.
Yeah, like Jersey, right. Jersey, the Rangers, Toronto, and Columbus look like all winnable games, right? And then they've got the game against Buffalo at home and 2 against Pittsburgh back-to-back. On April 11th and April 12th.
Yeah, those last 3 are going to come down. It's going to come down to them, and it's going to be huge.
Finish 6-1, they're in the postseason.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say that 5-2 gives them a shot. I think it does, but it probably wouldn't be enough. I have not, examined the other schedules of the teams in front of them. But I would say this: the Islanders have dropped 2 in a row, 3 of their last 5, and like 6 of their last 9. So they're not playing well. So that number 3 spot in the Metropolitan could actually end up being the spot they grab. Now, Columbus is obviously in the Metropolitan as well, but other teams are chasing down Columbus. We'll see. Good win for the Caps. Ovechkin at 31 goals leads the team, 27th in the NHL right now. In goals scored on the season. I mean, this dude can obviously still play. I don't know if this is the swan song. It'd be nice to see him go out, if he's going to go out, with a playoff series. Good morning, everybody.
Most 30 goals in NHL history.
Yeah. So I got this from T. T writes, and he wrote this yesterday. Kevin, the Commanders' social media team could really make a day of it tomorrow, meaning today, April 1st. April Fool's Day.
It's already started.
Here are a few. Welcome to Washington, Max Crosby, with a big picture of Max Crosby. What if they tweeted that out? I don't think that we would learn that from the Commanders' social media team, but if it's all in fun, yeah, kind of be mean to do that, but not as mean as a couple of the ones that T came up with. Number 2 would certainly be interesting, but at this point, would be obviously unbelievable because it would not happen. Welcome back to D.C., Kirk Cousins. T writes, this one was for you, Sheehan. Number 3, good luck today, Jaden. 4 to 6 weeks of recovery is nothing. What if that got tweeted out? And then the last two would be, this is from T, just a tweet with the old logo. Nothing else. Just the old logo tweeted out.
Somebody's already put out a bogus tweet about how with all the uniform news that's been in the news cycle lately, people have, since it's April 1st, put out tweets this morning saying that they're going to go back and use the logo and the name again. And a lot of people are buying it and picking it up.
Oh, God. Yeah. But none of those are from the social media
No,
team.
Of course not. No, it's not from our official account.
In Ashburn. And then the last one that T came up with is just a Frank Herzog call of touchdown Washington Redskins with a curious pair of eyes emoji on it. T kept going on and on. Those were his top 5. I'm going to end it there. Those would be, can you imagine if they did like something like that? That would be so mean. It would be so awful. They would be crucified for it. Crucified if it had anything to do with the name or the old logo or a Jaden injury or even a Max Crosby trade. 2 guests on the show today. John Crispen is going to jump on to talk Final Four. He does games for ESPN. We've had John on the show before. He's excellent. And Channel 9's David Harrison covers the team. He'll join us at noon. I got this from Samuel. Samuel just writes, why do you hate UConn so much? I'm not sure what I said about the UConn Duke game that would have made him believe that I hate UConn. It was, joy over Duke losing. Maybe you had that wrong, Samuel. A lot of old time, Maryland fans, ACC fans, they take joy in Duke, misery and Duke fan misery. So there was some of that. Look, I was rooting for Duke to cover because that's what I had on Sunday night. I had Duke laying the 5. But I actually think that UConn, it's fun to watch Danny Hurley coach basketball. He's really good at it. And the players he recruits are tough, hard-nosed kids. The Big East really is one of those leagues that has an identity. And it's never really changed. Good for them. Every team in the Big East seems to understand that. Now, they have certainly had years where teams like Creighton and Marquette even haven't been necessarily, down and dirty, gritty teams. They've been more finesse teams. Butler had some of those teams. But in terms of the old school Big East teams, UConn, St. John's, Georgetown, Villanova, Seton Hall, who am I forgetting in the Big East that's been there for a while? Providence. There is an identity to that conference, and I can appreciate that as a sports fan and as a basketball fan. And with respect to UConn, Samuel, they have tough, gritty kids. They have a tough, hard-nosed coach who is an excellent X's and O's coach. And, yeah, I don't have any issue with UConn. In fact, it would be really amazing and would put Hurley into an entirely new category if he were to win a title this coming weekend on Saturday night, and then on Monday night. You're now talking about 3 titles in 4 years. Are you kidding me? That's now into, wooden territory. I'm not saying I'd put him in the wooden class or the Bobby Knight class or the Dean Smith or Mike Krzyzewski class, but he'd be at the top of whatever that next tier is. Who am I missing from that list? Krzyzewski is the all-time wins guy, right? I think that's got to be it. So for me, it would be Wooden, Krzyzewski, Dean Smith, Bobby Knight. Now, your top winners are Krzyzewski. Boeheim is number 2 on the list. Pitino's 3 on the list. Who the hell knows how much longer Pitino will coach? Maybe he'll end up being the all-time winning coach. I don't consider him to be on that, in that Mount Rushmore category. Calipari's 4. Roy Williams is 5. Bobby Knight 6. Dean Smith 7. Jim Calhoun 8. And then it's Rupp and Huggins finish out the top 10. Man, Lefty is still number 16 on the all-time wins list. Where's Gary Williams? Gary Williams is 33rd on the all-time wins list in college basketball history. Yeah, I mean, I'd also throw Izzo into the conversation with Calipari, with Pitino, and of course with Hurley. But Hurley's 3 titles. I mean, if he were to win 3 in 4 years, and he's so good at what he does. By the way, that chest bump or the forehead to forehead with, I think it was Roger Ayers, the referee. Ayers had no problem with it. I think what my initial opinion of it was is probably what it was it was right after the shot, and it was more like Hurley going, can you believe what just happened? I don't think that he should have been teed up. I don't think that he should be suspended. I don't think any of that. Look, he's got a screw loose. There's no doubt about it. He's a bit of a whack job. There's no question. He might be, there's some issues with him. In addition to him being a great basketball coach. And it was a bit of a bizarre thing. But Ayers basically said it was more of like, a chest bump to celebrate with him. Kind of.
Well, Hurley also kind of explained it on Pardon My Take this week. So if I have the audio if you want to hear it.
Let me hear it.
We have to start with the most pressing question, the headbutt. The headbutt with Roger Ayers. What's going on there?
It was not head hug.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
I don't know. You ever see reindeer where they kind of like with each other's nose? They kind of.
My dog does that sometimes. Yeah, they nuzzle with like the top of his head. Yeah,
more of a nuzzle, an affectionate nuzzle. No, with Roger. See, all these refs are different, right? They all got different thresholds or personalities. Roger's like very playful. I mean, listen, the guy he's one of the greatest refs ever. Like the guy he don't mess up a lot of calls. When you're going too far, he'll give you a look and he'll tee your ass, but he's playful. He's funny. He messes with you during the game. You bust his chops back. And it was just so like, I would say that there's a lot of coaches that he refs that you have a much different type of relationship with Roger than you do with pretty much every other official.
Guys being dudes, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it looked like to me when I saw it on Monday morning, because remember what I said about Hurley over the weekend on Friday night and on Sunday night. And I actually had, hold on, let me just see if I can find it. Somebody with a lot of numbers and hashtags in his Twitter handle basically said, lifelong UConn guy, you were 100% right. Hurley's always on his best behavior when playing the best coaches. Interesting. Yeah, that's what I suggested about the game against Izzo on Friday night and the game on Sunday against Shire. Now, Shire wouldn't be at the Izzo level, obviously, but it's Duke. And there was a level of sanity for him over the weekend. All is relative, but for him, he was very tame and very focused. And it's kind of like, I made the analogy, and only a few of you will know this analogy. One person that would know this analogy would be Ian. But McEnroe used to be on his worst behavior for every opponent except for Bjorn Borg. And when he played Bjorn Borg, there wasn't a peep out of McEnroe. I mean, there wasn't one argument. He was so dialed in, so focused because he knew he had to be able to beat Borg. And he always talked about that. He said that was the one guy where I couldn't lose it. I had to keep it together. And I thought Hurley, if you watch him enough, you know that it's even money in every single game. He's going to lose his mind at some point. And he didn't do that in the Michigan State game. Not that I saw. And really didn't do that in the Duke game until the very end. But back to Samuel and your tweet. I have nothing against UConn. One of my all-time favorite stories. I've told it a million times. But It was in 2011. I was up in New York. It was the weekend of the Big East tournament. I was actually not there to attend the Big East tournament. I've never been to the Big East tournament. That's on the bucket list. Lambeau, South Bend, Duke, Carolina, Cameron Indoor. What else is on my bucket list? Big East tournament. I think none of the Olympics are on my bucket list of things that I haven't been to. But I was up there that weekend hanging out with friends, and my buddy and I got up early on a Saturday morning after a late Friday night at the New York Athletic Club, and we were playing pickup basketball in the gym at the New York Athletic Club. It was pretty crowded, typical Saturday morning gym where there's lots of pickup games going on, and we were playing. And the UConn basketball team was what walked into the gym, led by their PR guy, who said, you guys have to go. We're here to practice. They were in the Big East championship game that night against Louisville and Rick Pitino. This was the famous run with Kemba Walker in the Big East tournament when they won 5 games in 5 straight days to win the Big East tournament. And it was Saturday morning. The final was that night. And the PR guy goes, you guys have to get out. We're here to practice. And Jim Calhoun, the head coach of UConn, walks out onto the floor and for whatever reason looked at me and said, what's the score? And I told him what the score was, and we were, a couple of buckets away from the game ending. And he said, go ahead, you guys finish it up. And then Calhoun said, anybody that is interested in sticking around and watching us practice, you're more than welcome. Of course, that was big for me. I sat around and watched them practice. Although on their 5th, after winning their 4th consecutive game with Kemba Walker going nuts that week, they didn't practice much. It was a walkthrough, and I'll never forget, the only thing that they did in the 1 hour that they were there, and it was an hour, is they just walked through their press break, because Pitino's Louisville teams, Pitino's St. John's teams, Pitino's teams forever are full court pressing teams most of the time. And that's all they focused on was their press break, their press offense. And they walked through it. And I remember just sitting there and, they looked exhausted, but they ended up winning that Big East tournament. And of course went on to win the national championship in the tournament that followed. I'm just looking that up. Who did they beat that year in the final? That was one of the ugly finals. Was that Kentucky? No, Butler. They beat Butler in the final, in the 2011 final. 53-41 was the final score. No, I like UConn. I don't have any problem with UConn. Calhoun was a little bit sketchy in his recruiting back in the day. Couple of players that I know Gary would have liked to have seen come to Maryland. But there was, some shenanigans going on up in stores with their recruiting. But Calhoun was a really good coach. And on this list, 877 wins, 8th all time. But Hurley wins this weekend. He probably won't because Arizona and Michigan are that good. But man, the UConn team, super tough. The Mullins shot on Sunday night is certainly going to be remembered forever. It was fun to watch. I'm looking forward to the Final Four. John Crispen from ESPN will join us at 11 a.m. to talk about the tournament, talk about the Final Four, probably talk a little bit about Danny Hurley. Certainly he will be high profile this weekend in Indianapolis. All right, when we come back, I've got a what do you got? Chris Collinsworth is in the news, and the NFL's made and approved some rules changes. We'll get to that after this. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So I saw this yesterday after the show, and it was a lot of people tweeting about the layoffs at Pro Football Focus. You know, some of the names that we know and we've had on the show before were getting laid off. And the reason for it is that Pro Football Focus sold their business operations to Teamworks. Teamworks is a company based in Durham, North Carolina. And they have, I guess, a similar business, but not identical to it. And they are purchasing Pro Football Focus for an unreported amount officially, but many of the reports say it's somewhere around low 9 figures. So just let's say it's $100 million. Chris Collinsworth, for those that don't know, and I'm sure you do know at this point, given all the years of him calling Sunday Night Football and making PFF a big part of Sunday Night Football and talking it up as much as he has, he purchased a majority stake in Pro Football Focus back in 2014. Now, I have no idea if he still owns a majority stake. It's very possible that in some of those early years, they had to raise more money and he had to give up more equity. I don't know. I don't know the history of how that company was financed. I don't know if it was profitable when he bought it. I don't know anything about it. But if he still owns a majority of the company, and he's going to stay on, by the way, as an advisor to the company, that typically happens after a purchase. I mean, if he owned 51% of it and it's just $100 million, he just pocketed $51 million in cash. Now, I don't know if it was an all-cash deal or if it was cash stock. I don't know. But if it was an all-cash deal, Chris Collinsworth just did pretty well. I mean, over the years, how many conversations have we all had about Pro Football Focus? It's like, it's another data point. It's another piece of information. It isn't, the end all be all. It's not a tell all. Football's got 22 players on the field at a given time. Not everything is measured like it is in baseball. And you really, with that many players, have to have an understanding of what those players' responsibilities are on a given play to 100% of the time grade it accurately. I mean, one of the guys that I really like from PFF, Nick Ackridge, we've had Nick on many times on the show. Nick is a senior analyst at Pro Football Focus. I probably should have looked. Is Nick still employed there? I hope he is. I don't know. But because I don't think he tweeted anything out, did he?
No, I haven't seen anything from Nick regarding the layoffs.
For everyone checking in on me and asking if I was good, I appreciate you all. I'll still be grinding away, locked in my office, watching film until my eyes bleed. So that's good. I'm glad Nick is remaining there. Nick's really good. And one of the reasons I've liked Nick, and we've put a lot of, like everybody has, any sports talk radio host has probably had Pro Football Focus people on, your Sumer Sports people. Eric Eager used to come on the show all the time until he got hired by the Carolina Panthers. And now some of those guys like Sam Monson are at the 33rd team. I guess things were happening that made some of these guys jump to different places. I don't know. Maybe they got it. They were ahead of the curve there. But, one of the reasons I've always liked Nick is because Nick has said, look, we don't have every answer. There are some things that we get wrong and the teams will tell us. But over the course of time, we've continued to learn, about, teams have helped us. The teams are their clients. Every single NFL team has Pro Football Focus. They get grades from Pro Football Focus, like that following morning, Monday morning. And I'm sure there are other pieces of information that are provided to the team. And the team has their own data, and it's another piece of information that's used. I have no idea, what these teams pay for Pro Football Focus, but if the company was valued at $100 million minimum in terms of a sale, certainly the revenues are much higher than that, more likely than not. Maybe not. Maybe it's, I don't know. Crazy though. That's a crazy number. If somebody had asked me, because I don't know anything about the business, side of it. But if somebody had asked me over the last couple of years, Pro Football Focus just sold, what do you think they were sold for? I would never have said $100 million or more. Good for them. Good for Chris Collinsworth. I mean, that is, he saw something in 2014, and obviously for him to have bought a majority stake, it was a great majority owner to bring on because he was calling Sunday night games, and obviously they got the ability for a high-profile NFL announcer to be promoting Pro Football Focus. Not to mention, I'm sure in 2014, I don't know how many NFL teams were subscribers, were clients of Pro Football Focus. So Collinsworth probably helped on that end too. Collinsworth is a smart guy. He had a shorter NFL career of 8 years, was a good player, made the Pro Bowl his first 3 years in the league with Ken Anderson at quarterback in Cincinnati, and then was there for the Boomer Esiason years. But before Boomer really blew up into a great quarterback, sort of Boomer's early years. And then he went to law school, got a law degree, and, he made, if he still owns a majority of that company, the least amount he made or is worth after the sale is $51 million. I have one other, what do you got? I last night, don't ask me why. Well, you can ask me why. I stayed up and watched the majority of the Clippers-Blazers game on Peacock. I love Kawhi Leonard. The Clippers are a team that I've actually played here a little bit in some futures bets, and they're battling for the 8th spot in the play-in, which is huge. If you don't know anything about the NBA play-in, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are the seeded teams that have to play their way into the main draw. 7 plays 8, and the winner ends up being the 7 seed. The loser then plays the winner of the 9-10 game for the 8 seed. We've had this now for 5 years? 6 years? Or did it happen pandemic as the first year? I forget. The Wizards played in one of those games with Beal and Westbrook against the 76ers, I think. Or was that a series against the 76ers? I think they played their way in against the 76ers. Anyway, watching the game last night, I just keep getting reminded how good Deni Avdija is. I mean, he's an all-star this year. He had 28, 11, and 8 last night. He was dominant. He was the best player on the floor. He's better than Kawhi last night, who had a rough night, actually, overall. I mean, he still had 23 points, but couldn't knock down a 3, missed a bunch of shots, had a couple of turnovers that were kind of unforced. But watching Deni Avdija play this year, I mean, I always was a fan. I always felt like this is the guy that has a chance to become great. And he is great now in his, second year in Portland? Second full season in Portland? He's an all-star, averaging 24 a game, 7 rebounds, 7 assists a game. This guy's turned into a good shooter. Last night he drained, multiple threes. He has such a high motor all the time. He'd be the best player on the Wizards team with the best upside on their team if he were still on the team. They traded him to Portland for a first rounder, which became Bub Carrington, Malcolm Brogdon, and then a 2029 first and second rounder. That was the trade. So who knows what the 2029 stuff will turn into? And I don't know, maybe they've already dealt that as part of something for somebody else. And if that led them to Anthony Davis, I don't have the whole trail there. But I asked Michael Winger, remember we had him, Will Dawkins. I asked Will Dawkins about Deni Avdija, either the last time he was on or 2 times ago. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I remember what he said. He said, Denny's timeline didn't match up with ours. But essentially saying by the time we got ready to contend, he was going to be too old. All of our players were going to be, much younger. Deni Avdija is 25 years old, and he just turned 25 years old. Is that too old for this group? I don't know. I'd rather have Deni Avdija than Bub Carrington. Deni Avdija would be their best player right now on the team, and he'd be the player we would be talking. Now, one point, I failed to make this point, and it's an important one. Would Deni Avdija would he have been a part of a better team that would have kept them out of good draft positions? Maybe. I doubt it with what they had around him and with what the intention was. But that may have been part of what Will Dawkins was saying is we thought he was an ascending player too. We thought that he could be a really good player as well. But if he had become what we thought he was going to become too soon, we wouldn't have put ourselves into a position to do what we wanted to do. I don't know. He'd be the best player on the team right now, and he'd have the best upside of any player on the team right now. I mean, Anthony Davis aside. But Deni Avdija has turned into a star. He's not a top 5 player in the NBA. He's not a top 10 player in the NBA, okay? But he's got a chance maybe to make an all-NBA team in the next few years. He's that good. Some NFL rules changes approved out in Phoenix over the last 2 days. We'll tell you what those are, and no doubt the NFL is definitely trying to get to 18 regular season games. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch this program on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. So the NFL approved some new rules changes. I'm going to get to those momentarily. But the league also announced in Phoenix yesterday. I'm pretty sure we knew this because I think John Oran from Puck News told us this a few months back, that the NFL was leaning in the direction of eliminating the doubleheader Monday night games. So they did that. No more than one game on Monday Night Football in the upcoming NFL season 2026. They did not see a huge bump in ratings from it. The staggered times, I actually liked the two games on Monday night because at least your chances of getting at least one competitive game were doubled. And there are Monday nights in which you get a non-competitive game and there's no other option out there. I didn't mind them, but they are doing away with Monday night doubleheader games. I mean, they weren't even true doubleheaders because they would just stagger the start time of 7 o'clock and an 8:20 or whatever. I know that some of the West Coast games, sometimes you had, a 7:15 and a 10:15 or something like that. But no more of those. Now, why do you think they're doing that? They're doing that because they want to take those games back, 5 of them from last year, 6 of them, something like that. And they're going to package those games together and sell them to a streaming service. And we're going to get a Thanksgiving Eve game, a Wednesday night Thanksgiving Eve game. We're going to get another triple header Christmas Day spectacular because that's been sold on a year-to-year basis. Netflix didn't buy I think they bought 2 years of it, but I don't think Christmas Day has been sold quite yet. Christmas Day in 2026 is on a Friday. Which means that we'll probably have a Christmas Eve Thursday night game and then a triple header on Christmas Day Friday. Then you'll get games on Saturday the 26th, games on Sunday the 27th, and then a Monday night game on the 28th. Because that's not even – there are still 2 weeks in the season left after Christmas weekend. That's week 15 or week 16, week 17 and week 18 are the following weekends. So the NFL's taking back, 4 or 5 or 6 games, depending on the year, of Monday night doubleheaders. And they will package those games into Thanksgiving Eve. That's coming, right? We're going to see a Wednesday night Thanksgiving Eve game probably this year. And then we'll see Christmas Day games for sure. Again, a triple header, I would assume. I mean, as the hard day of the week for the NFL to figure out is Wednesday. Tuesday's not easy either. Friday's very easy. And last year it was Thursday. So the NFL rules changes this year. So the onside kick, which, starting a few years ago, you had to declare with the new kicking alignment. So you have to declare when you're kicking an onside kick. But you were only allowed to do it in the fourth quarter or in the second half if you were down by more than 2 scores. Now the competition committee says a team can declare an onside kick at any time during the game. That's really not an impactful rule change. You're not, given the lack of success on onside kicks, nobody's declaring an onside kick in the second quarter or even the third quarter. Maybe late third quarter if you're down, 20. That is rule change number 1. Rule change number 2, the elimination of the kicking team's incentive to kick the ball out of bounds when kicking off from the 50-yard line. Now, I have not seen what the explanation of how this will be, implemented. But remember that when there was a 15-yard penalty taken on the ensuing kickoff, teams figured out that if they just kicked the ball out of bounds, the team would then get the ball at the 25-yard line because it was 25 yards from where the ball was being kicked off. Everybody always assumed that rule was if the ball gets kicked out of bounds, it goes to the 40 for the return team. No, it's actually 25 yards from where the ball was kicked off. When the ball's kicked off at the 35-yard line and it goes out of bounds, you get the ball to 40 because that's 25 yards ahead. But when you took a 15-yard penalty on the ensuing kickoff, 25 yards ahead was the 25-yard line. Well, obviously, teams figured it out, and last year started kicking the ball out of bounds when they kicked off from the 50 to give the team the worst starting field position they can get without a return, the 25-yard line. So the competition committee is going to eliminate the kicking team's incentive to intentionally kick the ball out of bounds when kicking off from the 50-yard line. I would assume what that means is if you kick the ball out of bounds when kicking the ball off from the 50, the other team gets the ball as if the ball were kicked off from the 35 at the 40-yard line. Next rule. They're going to modify the kickoff alignment requirements for the receiving team players in the setup zone. I don't have any idea what that means. These were the headlines, and there's not a lot of detail around some of it. And then lastly, and we heard this last week, for 1 year only, the NFL officiating department back in New York will be able to correct clear and obvious misses made by on-field officials that impact the game in the event that there's a work stoppage involving the game officials represented by the NFL Referees Association. So if there is a referee strike, holdout, whatever it would be, if they don't reach an agreement with the NFL before the season begins and they've got to go to replacement referees, New York's going to have the ability, by rule, to correct clear and obvious misses. So any clear and obvious miss, catch, no catch, interference, no interference, holding, no holding, I don't know about that. But we'll see clear and obvious calls. There's going to be a lot of New York involved in these games. So there are the rule changes. Now, a big topic of conversation over the last couple of days in Phoenix is 18 games. This is going to happen at some point. The NFLPA, has taken a public stance opposing an 18-game regular season. But if you recall, the union took the same opposition stance before the league moved to 17 games in 2021. Now, per the collective bargaining agreement, they do have to agree on another expansion. And, the CBA talks, the expiration of the current deal isn't until 2030. So the NFL would have to sit down with the union to amend the current deal to get an 18th game added before 2030. I've talked about this a lot, and, I had somebody on recently, and I'm forgetting who it was, where we talked about it. There's a lot of pushback from players because of health reasons. There would have to be a couple of things that sort of go hand in hand with the expansion of the season to one more regular season game. Remember, you're also then going to reduce the preseason from 3 to 2 games. And also, by the way, an 18-game schedule likely opens up Labor Day weekend. We get football a weekend earlier, NFL-wise. It's been a long time since the NFL played on Labor Day weekend. There were, through the 90s, I'm pretty sure they opened up on Labor Day weekend. I forget when they stopped that and did the weekend after Labor Day. But Labor Day weekend would allow for 2 bye weeks during an 18-game schedule. So a 20-week season, you're playing 18 with 2 bye weeks. And then more times than not, that would result in the Super Bowl being President's Day weekend. It's not a guarantee that it would be President's Day weekend, depending on the calendar, but more often than not, it would be. Again, just 2 preseason games. Now, look, the NFLPA will always fight for something. There's got to be a quid pro quo for them. If they're going to agree to 18, they got to get something else. Now, remember this about the NFL. 48.5%. That's what the players' cut of the revenue is. This is a league in which they share revenues with the players at a almost 50-50 rate. So the players are going to win with the addition of of another game in terms of additional revenue. They're going to participate. You add another, it's not just another game, it's another 2 weeks to the season if they add a second bye. So now it's 20 weekends of NFL football. And the networks, the next time these deals come around, and one of them's up right now, they're going to end up paying a lot more, and the owners are going to make more, and the players are going to make more. Doesn't mean that the players shouldn't fight for other things. But this idea that the players get screwed when you add another game, they don't get screwed at all when revenues increase because they're a revenue share partner with the league. But from a safety standpoint, health standpoint, of course, there are things like added roster spots, going from 53 to something else. Now, we've heard coaches, including our own Dan Quinn, say we don't view it as a 53-man roster. We view it as a 70-man roster because we view the practice squad as a great opportunity to add players, develop players, and we have an ownership group that's willing to pay for the maximum number, I think it's 17, of practice squad players because they increased that practice squad a few years ago. I think it was during the pandemic. But in terms of game day availability, that would have to increase. Now, I've heard this argument, two arguments. One, you're just going to get more meaningless games, man. Did you watch week 17 last year or the week 18, 17? Look, it's going to happen regardless of the number of games. The weekend before the final weekend, if it's the 17th game or the 16th game, is going to include a lot of meaningful football. And then when you get to the very final week, whether it's the 18th game or the 17th game, it won't change. There are going to be some meaningless games because teams will have already clinched or have seeding wrapped up or whatever. So the number of games, there's going to be a certain number of meaningless games, but it's not going to be like an added week of meaningless games. It would just change in terms of the week. In meaningless games. The week before it, whether it's the 17th game or the 16th game, is still likely to have a lot of meaningful games and very few meaningless games. Now, there could still be some meaningless games. We have some seasons in which there are technically meaningless games for teams that are, 11-1 and have clinched, starting in week 13, week 14. But it's not going to change the number of meaningless football games because you've added a week of games. It'll just change the week in which it happens. It'll be the final week, but it'll be the 18th game instead of the 17th game. And then, of course, the other argument that a lot of people make is that you're really risking it with this thing. You keep pushing more games, more days. There is a saturation point. There is a point in which the public will push back and say, enough is enough. We don't want that much football. I personally don't think I'm going to be around for when that happens. This league, people can't get enough of, and extending it by another week or two, I don't think is going to change that. I do think there is a point in terms of the weekly schedule in which it can be too much. Like, we can't end up, 5-10 years from now having football on every night of the week, the NFL on every night of the week. And, there are, laws in place that would prevent that during high school and college football season in terms of Friday nights and Saturdays. But I don't want to see Tuesday night, Wednesday night football. I like the anticipation and the wait. Part of why we love it so much is there's so little of it, and you have to wait a whole off season, and then you get there. It fits in with your normal kind of fall routine. Everybody's back in a normal schedule. But then even on a weekly basis, you have to wait for it after Monday night. You have to wait until Thursday night. And that's just one game. And then if you start giving it to us every single night, I think that actually is higher risk than an additional weekend or two of the NFL. Look, the number one consumer product in this country when it comes to entertainment is the NFL. And the number two product in this country when it comes to consumer entertainment is college football. And there are lots of reasons why, and it's the bundled up nature, the short sprint nature of it. I don't think adding a week or two is going to do much to that. Up next, we'll talk some Final Four with ESPN's John Crispen. Final Four Saturday night in Indianapolis. Two good ones. Illinois, UConn, followed by Arizona, Michigan. Arizona, Michigan feels like a national championship matchup. John Crispen is with us. John calls games for ESPN, NBC, Peacock. John was a really good college basketball player. One of my favorite things to say when John's on the show is John not only scored 62 points in a high school basketball game, but his grandfather, Cliff, still owns the Maryland State high school boys basketball single game scoring mark. He scored 79 points in 1956. And as we've talked about before, I'm pretty sure there was no 3-point line. But I don't think I've ever asked you, was your grandfather a really good shooter? I'm assuming he was.
Yeah, he was one of the few that actually shot jump shots. So
Back then.
I think, back then, like he actually would pull up from 10 feet and shoot a jump shot. And I have this image of, there's a movie, Semi-Pro. I don't know if you've seen it, where in the movie, they had the first alley-oop dunk. And I have this image of my grandfather in some way in the 50s being the guy pulling up for jumpers, and everyone's like, whoa, what is that?
What is that?
What is he doing? Like, is that legal? Like, should we check the rule? Yeah, it's okay. You could do that. So he had more of we'll not call it a 3-level scoring game. It was still more a 2-level scoring game. But to score 79 points, and oh, by the way, we tried to taunt him a little bit. If you could even do that to your grandfather. He never said much about his career. But we tried to say, like, yeah, well, who'd you do it against? Sisters of the Poor. Or, you make up one of those. He goes, no, they were pretty good. They had 2 Division I guys on their team. And I'm like,
wow.
All right.
But John,
right.
John, it was because back then everybody shot a set shot, right?
Yes. And it was like, not exactly fluid. The game itself wasn't all that fluid. It was very your turn, my turn. So clearly there was a decent pace to that one. It's one of those things where like everything in our world is recorded today, and to the point where it drives you nuts, right? Like no moment is missed, which means every moment is missed, right? Because you're not in the moment. You're capturing it, right?
I hate the phones held up when people are at a great sporting event. Like, why don't you just live it and enjoy it? What are you doing?
Be present.
Be present.
Be present. Like, and by the way, you'll enjoy it a lot more if you're just present. You feel every bit of it. I would love to see some tape, but I'm sure it would be like that type of really sped up tape. When you see like the old school video where they're moving twice as fast because the frame rate just isn't the same. I'd love to watch that. And just in a way, it's like you look back and you go, that's where I'm from. And also, like, his life wasn't easy. Like, people always say, like, oh, you guys have been lucky. I'm like, yeah, but our luck comes from, and our blessings come from somebody else's suffering. And he went through it. And here we are. Brother was just named head coach at Air Force. I know Pop would be pretty proud of that. So it's all good stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. I did not know that. So your brother just got the Air Force job.
Yeah, just had his opening press conference yesterday. He took me on my word. I said, Joe, I will be all over you if you pull a piece of paper out and read anything. I said, we think about and talk about everything we think about. You could just roll. And he did, and it was awesome. It was nice to have somebody get up there and not use a single cliche and no coach speak, just simple talk.
Why don't you coach? You and I have talked about this before, but you'd be a really good coach. Why don't you do it?
So I think the honest answer is I'm not, at 45 years of age, I'm not willing to do what the world demands you do to be able to get to the level that I'd want to get. And I don't even care. I'm not one of those guys that says, oh, I need to be the head coach at a Power 5. No. I couldn't give a rip. Frankly, I knowing what I know and seeing what I see in the role that I'm in, I don't really want that. I like balance in my life. So at this point, am I willing to be a film guy to learn how not to do things? No, I'm not. I have too much conviction. I have too much clarity in my own world to go chase after something that's done a way that I just disagree with. So, would I coach someday? Maybe like a D3 level? Yeah, I'd probably do that, but I wouldn't do it to be a part of the world that everybody wants to be a part of, to have the power, the money, the success. I just wouldn't do it for that. It's not enough. So I like what I'm doing. I get to serve it in my own way. I get to be around it in my own way. And I own a trade school in South Jersey. So I'm touching the world of broadcasting and sports. And then I'm also putting 150 to 175 people a year in jobs. So it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Good balance.
A trade school. So what are you talking about? Roofers and electricians and plumbers, that kind of a thing?
Electricians, HVAC techs. We're opening a new location with welding and carpentry and plumbing. We do refrigeration. So, yeah, it's just getting people the opportunities they need to get in the field. It's all good.
Yeah, well, and some very good livings in those
Yes.
in those areas too. At John Crispen, ESPN on X. All right, let's go backwards before we go ahead, and let's talk about Duke UConn. You're a basketball guy. Tell me what Duke did incorrectly at the end of that game against UConn.
To me, it's less about the end of the game, and it's more about what allows you to give up leads. I just think that's the biggest issue. I look at a team that took their foot off the gas, and they've done this. Frankly, they did it last year. They had a better team last year, and they couldn't close the door. They took their foot off the gas. They tried to manage the end of game situations as opposed to just beating your opponent by 20. They got slow. And I think, look, Boozer's a part of that. As great as he is, playing through him slows the game down at times. Playing through Cooper Flagg was different. He didn't slow the game down. And that's not a knock. It's just a reality. I think we live in this world where it's if you say something, it absolutely means this. No, two things can be true at the same time. He gives you the best opportunity to win at the highest level, but there are also things that come where if you're playing against a team who's going on a run, you can't play your turn, my turn basketball. You've got to get back and create rhythm and flow. They weren't able to do that. So then you allow a team like UConn, who is at this point absolute house money, you allow a team to have a chance and you panic. Similar thing happened last year where they couldn't get the ball inbounds against Houston.
Yeah.
And a really good team didn't have a chance to live to their potential. So I think the panic, the fear, you can see it, you can feel it. I think a lot of that comes from the expectations, which that's what you get at Duke. But in the end, man, why are you throwing the ball around? I really couldn't get it. If they didn't foul Boozer, they were going to foul Sarr. If Sarr just dribbles it up the court, 3 seconds go off the clock, they foul Sarr. Maybe he makes one, so what? At worst case, you're playing for overtime. But to throw it around, for Isaiah Evans not to get a hand up when we found out on a radio show that his Instagram handle is get a hand up. Found that to be hilarious. Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't have wanted him to have a hard closeout on Mullins at 35 feet, right?
No, just a hand up. Because what you want to do in that case is make him dribble.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, and again, it's so easy for us who are not playing, who don't have all the feels that go into playing a game to say you should have done this. It's very easy to do that. But a lot of these situations are things you do go over. But you just can't simulate a trip to the Final Four on the line. That's what I try to tell people all the time. You can simulate situations. Hey, down 10 with 2 to play. This is how we're going to do it. Okay, that's great. But what do you do when you're actually playing in the Elite Eight with the Final Four trip on the line? All right, we're going to simulate an end-of-game situation where they have to foul, but they don't want to foul Cameron Boozer. All right. Well, you can run that all you want, but you can't simulate it with a Final Four on the line. So I just think we don't really take all those things into account. Things happen, breakdowns happen, and here we are.
You saw a lot of college basketball this year. The Wizards here in our town are likely going to end up with a very high draft pick. Where would Boozer go for you in the upcoming June draft?
Man, you see, this is a tough conversation. It's a tough answer because I don't think he's one of the top 5 guys. And that's not a knock on him in any way. It's just how quickly do you translate? Not do you translate. Well, if you're a great player and you know how to play the game and you understand how to get what you need in a game and then figure out how to mold and manipulate the game around you, he can do all that. But I think it's a 2, 3, 4 year process for him to really figure out where he fits within an organization, on the floor, how he plays guys around him. I think he's a tougher adjustment. He's a little bit more heavy-footed, wide base. The gait isn't athletic, but he's incredible at what he does. So is he the guy that's going to come in and just completely dominate the game the way Cooper Flagg has this year? No, he's not. He's not that guy. He's not Paolo Banchero either. He is very unique in his own way. So I look at guys like Darius Acuff, and I'm like, he makes somebody better right away. He's Chris Paul and Steph Marbury at the same time. I think that's a guy that makes everybody better right away. AJ Debonsa, I can't even pronounce it anymore. We've changed how we've said it over and over again, and it's been changed. So Debonsa, he translates right away. Caleb Wilson translates right away. Darren Peterson, whether he's going to play or not, he translates right away. So there are a number of guys out there that right away have an impact. And I think if you're going to take somebody in the top 5, they've got to have an immediate impact and not walk into a role when you're the type of team that has greater needs. So I don't want to knock him, but I do feel like there's a little Tim Tebow here where it's like the translation might not be quick.
Right. I agree with you. That was interesting, your comps for Acuff Jr., Marbury, and Chris Paul. I see Lillard in Acuff Jr.
Oh, yeah. He's got a little Dame Lillard in him. He doesn't look to – here's the funny thing is, as much as he scored, he went for 46 earlier this year. The game against Alabama was just epic. 49 it was. Absolutely epic performance. But his best skill is not scoring. Scoring is the byproduct of him knowing how to manipulate a game.
Yeah.
And you see him sharing the basketball. There are times when I prep for him. I had him a couple times this year. When I prep for him, I watch it. I'm like, 2 of his 4 turnovers were not on him. They were the interceptions that Peyton Manning had where you go, where is he throwing it? Well, he was actually throwing it where the guy should have been, right? He makes the right reads. He sees the game clearly. And that's where draft scouts and all the different scouts and GMs, they're going to start to see that clearer and clearer where they go, this dude knows the game before it happens. That's special. And to find that in such a young kid who's got a great demeanor too, which I think is important. He's just got a stone cold demeanor. That's the kind of guy I'd want.
Yeah, I love him too. Now, the one thing in these games, it doesn't seem like his favorite thing is guarding anybody. That doesn't seem to be a high interest for him at this point.
No, that's a challenge. I think it's a challenge for incoming freshmen who have never played defense, and now you have 1-year teams. So, is it the kid's fault or is it the fault of reality? That's a term I like to use, the fault of reality. Well, the reality is you're not teaching defense the way you used to teach defense. You're playing. You're teaching situations. You're saying, all right, well, this is how we're going to defend ball screens. But you're not teaching strong side, ball side, help side. You're not doing all that stuff. You're not running shell drill. Very few teams do that stuff anymore. And those are the ways you just learn the basics of defense. Right? Now, what I do think he can do is what the NBA asks you to do, and that's guard. Can you guard when you need to guard? He has the capability of doing it. He just really hasn't had the demand put on him. So you go to the next level, there's going to be demand placed on you to not get exposed. I think he'll figure that out. It's a different way of playing the game anymore with 1-year teams.
All right, here is maybe a bit of a contrarian take here, but I want your thoughts on it. I actually thought before this game, and I still think it now, that the Purdue-Arizona game was a matchup of the 2 best teams in the tournament. And Purdue was not anywhere near as good as Arizona was in the second half. But Purdue, handled Michigan in that Big Ten final. They had been playing at a super high level for about a month after sort of floundering a little bit in the middle of the season. I think that they had a 7-point halftime lead, but I think they're the second best team in the country, no longer in the tournament. What did you think of that game and my comment about Purdue?
Well, I don't disagree, but it falls in the category of you're not wrong, but that doesn't mean you're right. You know what I mean? Where it's like I can't disagree with you, but you might not be absolutely right. Where Purdue was off the charts good is when they just played everything through Braden Smith. And if you look at the Michigan game, it wasn't about all the sets that they run to free guys up on the perimeter. That was happening, but it was happening as almost like a decoy, as camouflage, where all the action started and ended with whatever Braden Smith could have done. The defense it was a gravity that came his way. It opened up the floor. Everything worked for Purdue. When they couldn't get stops, it didn't matter what worked. And then they started chasing the game. So Arizona was a team that they made shots. And that first half was a remarkable performance. Watch them. You just watch them. You're like, Arizona team, if they make shots, they're almost impossible to come back against. They're also physical. They're tough. They do execute. They have a great game plan of creating rhythm, flow, getting up and down the floor. Purdue got chasing the game. And if they can't dictate the game early through Braden Smith, then they get behind, and then it's a struggle fest because they struggle to come back if they can't get stopped. So I think Michigan's probably – I think it's Michigan and Arizona, the 2 best teams. I give the nod to Michigan because I think what they've gone through in the Big Ten has allowed them to face a lot of variety. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean you're going to win every game. But when you look at the records, I mean, what are they, like 28? They're both like 28-3, 20-4. Like, they had 35-3 and 36-2. I mean, that's what we got in the Final Four. These are teams that have won a lot of basketball games. So I get you're going to have a couple hiccups. And if you're Michigan, I wouldn't feel too badly about it because they look pretty darn good this tournament.
Kaufman-Wren's foul trouble hurt them. Arizona was the better team, don't get me wrong. But I did want to ask you about Braden Smith since you brought him up. I think he plays at the next level. Do you?
I do. I really do. I think, in a way, the next level has gotten so space-oriented, ball screen-oriented, and passing-oriented because it's advantage basketball. They just want to find and create an advantage. And you look at some of the other guys, I think he needs to continue to develop his shot. And it's not really develop a shot. He's got a good shot. He's got to develop the ability to get it off. That's what that's what the next level is all about. Can you get shots off? I know you can move the game. Can you get shots off? That's the next step. A guy like Peyton Pritchard, and I hate to do that. You take a 6-foot white guy and you compare him to a 6-foot white guy. Can't stand when we do that in our business, but they both have the same limitations, if you can call it that. Maybe we'll call them constraints, not limitations, where size is an issue. How do you get shots off? That's going to be the next level of maturation for Braden Smith's game. And if he can do it, coupled with all the other things he does really well, I don't see how he doesn't play at the next level.
Yeah, it's so funny because I think we all do the same thing. I compared him to Steve Blake, who had a 13-year NBA career and was very underrated as a shooter and as a defender coming into the NBA because he was long-armed and competitive as hell. And Braden Smith has like a 6'7" wingspan, which I don't think most people would know. Talking about Acuff controlling a game, what did you make of just Keaton Wagler's, a couple of games last weekend and kind of controlling both of the games, the Iowa game and the Sweet 16 game as well?
I think what's been most impressive about Wagler is his ability to control the game within their system. And their system is very European, as is their roster makeup.
Yeah.
But they play like an old European pro team. I even made the comment in one of the games I was doing that if I was a high-level European pro team club, I would just hire all 7 of them. I would take 7 or 8 of those guys and just say, we want you guys to play together because it's masterful basketball.
It really is.
They don't rush.
Yeah.
They are never in a hurry, and there are times when it doesn't look like they're looking to push, but they will if they have the opportunity. They really give you one chance to score, and then they walk it up, and it's like, all right, guys, buckle up. Like, whatever you do, we have a counter for. And they're the beneficiary of space on the floor, where you have bigs who can shoot, bigs who you can play through, bigs that will command the double at times in the post. But also, if playing against Houston, they welcome 2 guys coming to the basketball in a ball screen situation because they passed out of it and they played 4-on-3. And guys like Andrei Stojakovic had lanes to the basket when there are rarely ever lanes to the basket against Houston. And they were there because of the space on the floor. A lot of that comes from Wagler and his ability to just patiently operate their system. And I think he doesn't get enough credit for that maturity. He gets credit for his skill and the big numbers he put up earlier this season. Well, he might have been 40, 45 or 46 again this year.
46 at Purdue.
Those numbers, 46. It jumps off the charts, but what really stands out is his ability to play within the system and operate that system well. And then when he needs to be the guy, he's the guy. So I think his patience is really jumped off the charts this year.
John Crispen from ESPN joining us right now, does work for NBC and Peacock as well. So let's jump to the 2 games and start with that one. Illinois against UConn. Who do you like and why?
Well, I like Illinois because in a I hate to say your turn, my turn, but it's a your turn, my turn game. UConn wants to operate in the half court. They want to execute 50 different sets. And I think Danny Hurley needs to get more credit for the job he's done this year. I think his antics kind of take away what he's really done with this group because they couldn't make a shot to save their life coming into the tournament. And then they stunk when they got into the tournament. The fact that they're playing in the Final Four is really a byproduct of all the different things they do that you have to prep for that give them an advantage. They have a ton of sets. And in a short prep, good luck with UConn. There's too much to go over. So there's confidence in that. I think Taurus Reed's been really good, so that helps. If they can make shots, they can keep it a game, but I just don't see how they can stop Illinois. There's so many weapons, and they're so comfortable playing in that style of game. It's almost as if UConn has to put pace on the game, but I struggle to think that favors them. So I think it goes the way of Illinois.
I mean, does anybody have as many sets, as many plays, as a thicker playbook than Danny Hurley has?
No. And the fact that he's doing it in the era of one-year teams might be the most remarkable thing. I mean, to get guys to buy into following orders anymore is unbelievable. And there has to be an aspect of intimidation. And I don't mean that in the negative way. I just mean like, he's my coach, I will listen. Right. And I think he's got that. And these guys buy into it. You know, sometimes the key is understanding what you're not. Everybody wants to talk about what you are. It's like, yeah, what we are is fine, but it's good to know what you're not. They're not an elite level basketball team. So they've got to be the best product together. And that's what they figured out. They play to their strengths when they recognize a strength. So if there's something that's working inside, they're going to keep playing to it. If using Taurus Reed around the perimeter as a screener, because the NCAA tournament, they actually allow you to screen without calling fouls. If that frees you up into your secondary and your third options, then you're going to operate a little bit more with them around the perimeter. So there's a good amount of feel, but there is an extensive playbook to go to. And there are not many people that do it. I think Northwestern does a really good job. They run a lot of different stuff, but nothing like UConn.
That was an interesting observation you made, because I kind of felt the same way and sort of noted it in watching the tournament, is that they're really very, very liberal with calling moving screens. Like they're letting you set screens. And there's a lot of contact, and sometimes it's moving. I have not seen what you see during the regular season, which is one of the favorite referee calls, right? You know, an illegal screen to sort of wave it off and point in the other direction. I have not seen a lot of that. Why do you think that was a conscious effort or a conscious decision, referee wise? We're going to let them play a little bit. We're not going to get some of these big dudes in foul trouble early with moving screens.
I think it's the conscious subconscious, right? Like the whole season, officials know. They're like, I really don't want to call this, but it's a point of emphasis. And we had it a few years back with freedom of movement.
Right.
And I always said, look, if you make freedom of movement a point of emphasis, you need to have a counterpoint of emphasis that is freedom of contact. Otherwise, you're just going to blow the whistle the whole time. So you need to be able to define what allowable contact is within a contact sport if you're going to have this freedom of movement idea. Because all we did was blow the whistle. We celebrated the fact that we scored more, but we didn't look at the fact that it was all foul shots. It's like, that's not good basketball. Just because we're scoring 1 point more per game doesn't mean it's actually working. No, we're just putting dudes on the foul line, and the game stinks. So that's freed up a little bit. Then we got into the illegal screening, which needed to happen, but not at the level that we're seeing it. So during the year, it's not just about the foul that gets called and not being able to free up your offensive teammates. It's about the fact that you're taking some of the best players off the floor for something that was allowable a year ago.
Right.
So I actually like that they finally get to the point where they say, we're going to let them play a lot more. We will clean up egregious, but we are going to allow contact. And I think players have adjusted to it just fine. Both teams are able to do it. The ones that you shouldn't be able to get away with are the handoff butt screens. Those are so impactful because it takes you 2-3 feet off your line, and now you're in a short roll situation in a 2-on-1. And so I like the idea of officials sitting down and looking at, hey, what's a foul that gains an advantage? Let's call those. I think that's the final iteration of it. And I think that's where we get when we get to the Final Four, because while we want to let players determine the outcome of the game, we want to make sure players have the opportunity to determine the outcome of the game. So finding the balance has got to be key.
All right. So you like Michigan because of the wars they've been through in the Big Ten more than Arizona. But how do you see the matchup? What's the key for Arizona? I mean, the way they played the second half and the way they played at times this year, they just have 7-8 guys that seemingly could start for everybody in the tournament.
Yeah, except Michigan. And I think that's what makes it so good. It's like they're both very similar. And I would say the difference is Arizona's been able to play their way all season. And when they haven't been able to play their way, they've lost some games. Michigan's played a variety of different contests, right? When you play Iowa, it's a different way of playing.
Yeah.
Like they will slow you down. They will make it methodical. They will make you uncomfortable. You just have to accept that the game might be won in the 70s. So I think using Yaxel Lendenborg has been huge for them, where they put him around the perimeter, they put him inside, he scored in mid-range. That's really opened the game up a lot more for Michigan. Elliot Cadeau's gotten better as a scorer. They also recognize moments, and it's really hard to point these out in the broadcast, but I always say, like, I want to be able to illustrate like recognition of the moment, right? When you just made 2 baskets and you got another stop, look for a tough shot coming. And Michigan's willing to take a quick next shot to bury their opponent and maximize the effect of that moment. They do that really well. And it does remind me, and this is a dusty thing, it reminds me of FAU when they went to the Final Four. They made runs, and then they had what I would call run daggers, right? Run daggers are when you're on a 10-2 run and you get that stop, and then there's one really big haymaker that basically ends the run because it leads to a timeout from the other coach. They have run daggers, and that's almost a reset of the game. The difference is this is a Michigan team that once that game resets, they know how to ramp it back up again. So I think there are so many little things about them that go kind of unnoticed, but they're really tough to play against. And when they hit multiple run daggers in a half, it feels like you already lost the game.
You know, there's a kind of this prevailing there's no such thing as momentum thought among analytics people. And what you just described, there's so much emotion in that moment, and the pressure of not having scored for a couple of possessions, and you're on the wrong end of an 11-2 run that's about to go to 13-2 or 14-2. That next possession is so much harder than the offensively against a team in that moment without a timeout. And it's just, everybody understands that in basketball, you feel it more because the possessions and the scoring comes so quickly and the big moments come so quickly. And man, when there's a road environment, and you're the road team and it's the home team that's making the run, it's hard, really hard. All right. So Michigan, Illinois, and all Big Ten final, who wins it?
I got Michigan winning it. I think Michigan can play the game that Illinois wants to play. And I just think they have the matchups to be able to win it. Now, that being said, it would require somebody for Illinois goes off. And it's likely Keaton Wagler. I just think they have enough length to really disrupt him. And also Michigan can switch. So the switching defense really negates a lot of what Illinois does well. It'll turn into more of a one-on-one game. So Michigan's ability to switch, but also play with different lineups and different rotations where Yaxel may be at the 4-5, doesn't really matter. They've got great size. They space the floor really well. I think it negates a lot of what Illinois does well, but I think it would be a great game. And I know there's one group of people out there that would love to see that final because it guarantees them a championship. It's the Big Ten.
Yeah.
It's been since 2000. I was a freshman in college. Unreal.
Well, a team in the Big Ten has won one more recently. That would be Maryland. But they were not in the Big Ten when they won their tournament in 2002. Always enjoy this. Thanks. Enjoy the weekend, John. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. My pleasure.
John Crispen, everybody, ESPN, NBC, Peacock, does a great job calling games and was a really good player himself. His brother was an excellent player as well. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Lots of stuff coming out of the NFL league meetings in Phoenix where, not only do owners and general managers show up, but coaches show up, and lots of things get said and lots of things get taken and run with. But you also learn some things, and you certainly learn in some cases what certain people are thinking. So the opening of the NFL season on Wednesday night, September 9th, and Thursday night, September 10th, it'll include a home game for Seattle on September 9th, a Wednesday night to kick off the 2026 NFL season. And then the following night at 8:35 Eastern, the first ever game in Australia, Melbourne, Australia, featuring the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. The Rams apparently were earmarked as the team that would host this game. And Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers coach, weighed in Phoenix earlier this week as to why his team is the Rams' Week 1 opponent. Here's what he said.
I'm pretty sure the Rams lobbied for that game.
What?
I know for a fact they did. And
Yeah.
because so bothersome.
Yeah.
So
When
hopefully the league will do right and let us play the Rams in Mexico, since we got to go out of the country twice, and they requested us. I'm requesting them in Mexico.
Oh,
not that gives us an advantage. It's just fair to make them go out of the country.
That would be great to have the two games between the Rams and the 49ers. Neither played on
I mean,
I knew he might go this way when he brought it up. I knew it. I knew it.
So I was waiting for the right moment. Sorry.
So I have brought this up a little bit. So you think the Rams have lobbied because they're sick of seeing the 49ers dominate the crowd at SoFi.
And I get that.
Yeah.
Like, that would suck to
Yeah.
have to do silent cadence and have our home game at their stadium.
Yeah.
So I get their ambitions, but
sure.
they were rewarded that. So I'm just hoping we can get our request too. I'd love them to come to Mexico.
That's
Our
awesome.
Mexican fan base is awesome.
It is. It's like bang dang.
It's the
49ers
best.
gang. That's it. They are. They're amazing.
So you heard the reason Kyle believes they were scheduled. The Rams lobbied for the 49ers to be the opponent because they don't want to play the 49ers at SoFi. It's not a home game for them. Most of the Rams' home games tend to be neutral site environments, best case. And I was looking at their home schedule. I mean, they play Seattle at home. Seattle fans end up taking over SoFi. Dallas at home this year. Cowboy fans have definitely taken over SoFi in the past. Chiefs, they have at home. The Rams play the Chiefs at home this year. They play the Chargers at home. That's not a big deal. They play Buffalo and Green Bay at home. They have a terrible home schedule for, an opportunity to play a home game that feels like a home game. I mean, pretty much Cowboys, Bills, Packers, Seahawks, Chiefs, and Niners all at home. Who's missing? Pittsburgh in terms of fan bases that really travel? That's a terrible home schedule for the LA Rams at SoFi. Now, it's not as bad for them as it is for the Chargers every year, but it's not good for them. It's one of those things you really have to factor into a season with the Rams and the Chargers every year. I mean, the Rams are the favorites right now to win the Super Bowl next year. And they have, on paper, certainly a great football team. I think it's hard to argue that they weren't the second best team in the NFL if you assume that Seattle was even better than them. They beat them twice, a little bit flukish in that Thursday night regular season game that enabled that NFC title game to be in Seattle rather than in SoFi. But the Rams have, Seattle, Dallas, Chiefs, Bills, Packers, all as home games in SoFi that will feel like road games. And then the 49ers game they're going to play in Melbourne, where I bet you there are more 49ers fans there than Rams fans anyway. It's a tough thing for the Rams and the Chargers. They just have – the Rams had at least, a fan base in L.A. from all of the years that they were in L.A., and the Chargers are a couple of hours north, but we've seen what's the Chargers fan base has become. I mean, it is really, really bleak for them when they play home games more times than not. But that is, I mean, I just pulled it up during the break. That's a brutal for crowd environment situation. That's a brutal home schedule for the Rams. They have a home game against the Cardinals and a home game against the Giants. Those might be the two in which it won't feel like a road game, depending on if the Giants are good or not. What if the Giants ended up being good, then, and the game was later in the season, that would be a problem. So there you go. The Rams lobbied for the 49ers. I think looking at their home schedule, I would have probably lobbied for the Cowboys. Although the 49er game is such a bigger game for them because it's a division game. So that's perhaps why it made sense for them to do that. So typically what you see in most sports books as it relates to the draft is you see odds on the team that will draft the top 5 players. And then after the top 5, you typically don't see a lot of odds on the players that'll go to, say, Washington at 7. But DraftKings basically did go a bit further. And the favorite to select Jeremiah Love in the first round is Tennessee at plus 115. The second favorite to select Jeremiah Love in the first round is Washington at plus 120. They're almost at the same odds. They see 2 teams in the top 7 as the only teams that will take Jeremiah Love, essentially. Tennessee at plus 115 and Washington at plus 120. By the way, the over-under on Jeremiah Love is 4.5, meaning you can take under, he's going to be selected in the top 4, or you can go over, he's going to be selected after 4, 5, or later. So that's the over-under. Now, if you go over, you're laying 160, minus 160. So that gives you kind of the Washington odds at 7. But Washington, the second favorite to land Jeremiah Love per DraftKings. And it's not that far away from what Tennessee's odds. I'm telling you, when we get to, 3 weeks from tomorrow night, Tennessee's pick will be significant. Because if they don't pick Jeremiah Love, there's a really good chance he's going to be on the board at 7. That's going to make a lot of you excited. Really excited if that ends up happening. Something Adam Peters said that we have not played for you this week. You'll hear it next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So in Adam Peters, making the rounds with media out in Phoenix Monday and Tuesday, he sat down with the NFL Network's Kay Adams. And there have been plenty of mocks with Ohio State linebacker Sonny Styles coming to Washington. He was asked by Kay Adams about Sonny Styles. This is what he said.
Sonny Styles, friend of our show.
Is he?
Unbelievable.
He's an impressive kid.
Unbelievably
He's a really
impressive. But I'm
young
saying
man.
that from a chatting perspective, from your evaluation perspective, Sonny Styles objectively.
Oh, he's outstanding. I mean, we went to their pro day last week, and they have 4 guys that are probably going to be picked in the top 10. That place is a factory, and they got great coaches, and the players are really well coached, and they're really good. And Sonny fits into that category. He's big, he's long, he's fast, he's athletic, he's really smart, he's a great leader. So, he's a really good player.
I told him I think like of all these things, but your football IQ is really what sort of pops a little bit. Can you speak to that a little bit from what you see?
Yeah, I mean, he gets those guys lined up. All the players on the team revere him. They talk about his leadership, his ability, his football IQ. The coaches do. So, I mean, if you talk to anybody there, he's going to be a team captain, guy for 10 years.
Sounds like he likes Sonny Styles. With Adam Peters, and maybe it was Kay Adams, I don't know, but he was about as animated as Adam Peters can be in talking about a player. That's the first time I've heard that. That's the first thing that I thought of was, and look, we've talked about this many times in the past. Sometimes it's, a big name, national NFL, interviewer. Like I've noticed this with my good friend Scott Van Pelt, who's great at what he does. But, a lot of the players and coaches, they can't wait to be on his show. They're fans as well. So sometimes that creates an environment where you're able to get even more out of somebody. We've heard Adam Peters most of the time say very little and say it in borderline monotone. That's not what he was there. I'm not saying that he's given away anything there, but clearly they're very, very high on Sonny Styles, as is everybody else. And remember, we played that answer. See if you can find the one about positional linebacker, running back, safety, his answer on that from yesterday. Do you have it? Play that. I forget what the question was leading in, but he talked about, the positional value. Many people have essentially said, you don't take running backs at, top 10, linebackers, top 10, safeties, top 10. Here's what he said.
There's been a lot of conversation about some of the guys at the top of this draft are at non-premium positions, including like running back. And part of the conversation is like the economics of it, like draft that player that like it's just not as the price later on, especially, is not as high as some other ones. Therefore, maybe it's not making a good value play from a salary cap perspective. Does that matter to you at all? Or just the talent?
You consider it, yeah, but I really consider more how much they can impact us, and talking with our coaches, talking with the staff and the other scouts, like, okay, how much can this player impact us? And whether you're saying it's a running back, whether it's a safety, whether it's a linebacker that are non-premium positions, but at the same time, like I had Fred Warner in San Francisco, and I can't tell you how much that guy impacted our team. And so, like, there are exceptions to that, and so I think you're kind of you can overthink it by doing that sometimes. But just I would like to say take the best player who can help us now and in the future, and worry about the second contract later.
Yeah, I mean, remember this, Fred Warner was taken in the 3rd round. He wasn't taken in the top 10. And I think Adam Peters had something to do with finding Fred Warner in the 2019 draft, something like that. But the point is, do you take a player like that at number 7 overall? I'm all for, you got to try to get a great player, period. The positional argument, I understand the math on it. I understand, the value of having certain positions on rookie deals versus others. But the bottom line is, you don't want a mediocre player on a rookie deal that, at that point, at a premium position, at that point, it won't matter if the player's mediocre. I'd rather end up with a great player that ultimately, you're not getting as much value out of the rookie deal. The value comes in the performance on the field. And so if they think Jeremiah Love or Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs are absolute surefire blue chip A-plus superstar potential players, and they're the highest players on the board when they get there, take them. I mean, I think I mentioned, just that draft where, in 2023, when Detroit selected Gibbs at 12 and then a linebacker shortly thereafter. But they're both great players. This team needs great players. I do like Sonny Styles. I like him a lot. I mean, and it goes well beyond what he did in Indy, with the size and the speed and the testing. There's just a real intellect there and a downhill physical mentality that you love for a guy who is, 6'4", 6'5", and 250 and runs 4.35. And apparently, according to everybody, is really smart and a born leader. Up next, David Harrison, who covers the team and was out in Phoenix this week from Channel 9, will jump on with us. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Max just pointed me to a story on ESPN.com written by Jeremy Fowler and Tim McManus titled Inside Eagles 2025 Friction as Jalen Hurts stands at a crossroads. And I read through the first several paragraphs during the break. I can't wait to get to the rest of it. Wow. Jalen Hurts, this is going to be the season, I think, where it'll determine whether or not he comes back to Philly after 2026. Sounds like he's difficult to coach. Joining us right now is David Harrison. I think this is the first time we've had David on the show. David does a really good job covering the football team for Channel 9, and he's got a podcast on the Locked On Network. You can follow David on X at dharrison82. So you were out in Phoenix earlier this week, David. What did you learn?
Yeah, just a little bit of insight into kind of what the Commanders are kind of thinking of what they're looking at. I think we got more roster type of stuff out of Dan Quinn. You know, I'm sure you saw it. Obviously, John Keim was able to have kind of a one-on-one conversation with him before the league meeting started. Got a little bit of insight into the linebacker situation and some stuff on like Zach Ertz and as a potential return. And it was fun to see that he was, you know, hanging around the league meetings and chopping it up with Dan Quinn a little bit as well. And then they had the signing that happened while we were there and just kind of adding more D-line depth and doing things like that. So I think what you expect from Adam Peters, right, is to fill as many holes as possible to the extent where even if they're not all, you know, blue chip free agents, it gives him the ability to go after the guy that he thinks best fits their roster versus having to feel like he's forced into a corner to fill a need. And I think that's just kind of what they continue to do right now.
Let's take a step back. Let's go through this offseason chronologically together because I haven't had you on the show, and so I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it. You're doing a great job covering the team. So let's start with Biotish. Do we know why Tyler Biotish isn't a part of the roster anymore?
I don't think definitively anybody really knows. You know, we can kind of look at some things and say, you know, he's never been like the greatest reach blocker and never been able to get to kind of that second level as much as some people would like. When you look at David Blau and, you know, we don't know how much of a Ben Johnson-like offense is going to be, but obviously there's an expectation that there's going to be a good amount of Ben Johnson style of offense there. That's something that offense kind of needs is guys that can get to that second level and do really good things. And while Tyler was good at a lot of things, I don't think he was really great at any one thing. He wasn't an overly powerful lineman, but he also wasn't an overly athletic lineman who could just kind of get out there and open up lanes and attack second level defenders. He's got a great IQ. I think he was good in the locker room, things like that. But I think really, you know, just from my looking at it, I think the Commanders just kind of felt like they could potentially get better in that position. And it's one of those situations where while you have that guy on the roster, there's kind of a cap there to where you almost feel like you can't pursue that higher level of play. And this kind of opens them up to that competition, which, you know, right now I know not a lot of people are super thrilled about the Nick Allegretti, Julian Good Jones competition, but, you know, there's still, DQ mentioned in Phoenix, there's still a month left, you know, roughly before the NFL draft. There's the NFL draft itself and other moves that they could decide to make that battle a little bit more interesting. But I also think they have a good amount of confidence in Nick if they decide to go that way as well.
Well, let's assume that they had a plan when they decided to move on from Biotish. And when I say decided, you know, we're still, like you said, it's still a bit of a mystery. For all we know, they perhaps offered him something, but much less, and he said no. But let's just say they had a couple of plans. I don't think Allegretti was plan A. Do you?
I mean, the reports out there were that they went after Linderbaum.
Right.
So I think clearly Linderbaum was probably plan A.
So what do you think happened? The money just got out of control and they backed out?
Yeah. I think that's something like on Lost on Commander that talks about this a lot leading up to free agency that, you know, I think Adam Peters was willing, obviously he was willing to take swings, right? He went after Alec Pierce, got Odafe Owe in, went after Jalen Phillips reportedly, Romeo Dobbs. So he was definitely willing to go out there and spend a lot of money. And they did spend a lot of money really relative to what they've done in the past. But I think that everybody's at their limits, and obviously AP, just what we learned from him in his contract situations is he's going to draw a line in the sand, and if that line gets crossed, then he's willing to make the right decision. You know what I mean? And I don't know where that line was for him. I think I know that Tyler Linderbaum made more money than anybody expected him to. We knew he was going to set the market. How much he was going to set the market was the question. I thought the deal could get up to like $25 million per year, and even that was a very large increase over the market cap from previous contracts, and he even eclipsed that. I actually did the research, and we haven't seen a position group ceiling rise as much as it did with Tyler Linderbaum's contract since Patrick Mahomes. And Tyler Linderbaum actually doubled the amount.
In terms of what percentage increase from what was expected?
The percentage jump.
Yeah.
From the top cap to the new top cap. Yeah. Because I think
what was it? It was probably like a 30% difference, right?
It was 50. It was 50%.
It was 50?
Yeah,
wait, he got 29. What was the aggregate of guarantees?
It was 18. It was who was it? I can't remember who it was anymore, but it was 18 million before that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's it seemed like it in the moment. I didn't realize it was that much. So what do you think if Nick Allegretti is part of, the solution, let's just say there are a couple of solutions and that's number one. I saw that you talked to, it looks like Quinn, about Brandon Coleman potentially playing center. Do you think that that's a legitimate, thing? Like that could be a part of their plan?
I don't know that it's part of the plan as much as it is just leaving the door open. And that's kind of what I wrote in the story that I wrote after that conversation with DQ is they're leaving that possibility open. Dan shared with everybody that they did do some stuff with Brandon at center towards the tail end of last season. And what kind of really sparked my interest there is towards the tail end of last season is also when they were starting to do some side things with Jaden under center and kind of starting to get him comfortable there too. So it's definitely not a throwaway thing. It's definitely something that's like, hey, let's look at this for potentially the future. And DQ was really complimentary of Brandon about the way that he could snap the ball, get off the line of scrimmage, get out there and move. So I think that athleticism that we knew he had coming out of TCU really stands out. So I think it's intriguing. But DQ did say, the plan is for Brandon to start the offseason program at left guard, like him and Chris Paul. That's going to be the competition there. Nick and Julian will be the competition at center. But that at the end of the day, it's about getting the best five guys out there on the line of scrimmage. So as they go through OTAs, as they go through training camp, if it becomes apparent to them that they need to give that a try, like that's something that DQ is willing to give a try if that situation arises, give Brandon Coleman that opportunity. So I don't know. I wouldn't say it's an expectation from my angle that Brandon is going to get center snaps once we get to OTAs and all that, but it is definitely something if we get to camp and we kind of see like maybe the line doesn't look fluid, maybe it doesn't look kind of cohesive, it might start to get to a place where they do give Brandon that opportunity.
My gut tells me that there's a really good chance Brandon Coleman ends up being the starting left guard. They were willing to let Chris Paul, move on. He obviously didn't get what he and his agent thought they would get. And I don't know, maybe they're looking for the more athletic, interior offensive lineman based on what we might see in terms of an increase of sort of zone runs, inside zone, outside zone, run scheme, a run scheme. Do you think that like, to me, there's a better chance Brandon Coleman's the starting left guard than is the starting center, like a much better chance. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that sentiment. But I think that if Brandon gets into that center competition, if he does get the opportunity to do that, I think he can definitely do some good things. Really, the big question I have about Brandon Coleman, if he does get in that center conversation from a functional standpoint, not just conversational standpoint, is the mental side of it, the football IQ side of it, and understanding, everything that needs to be set. Because like Nick Allegretti, when he re-signed, kind of talked about one of the things he loves about the center position is it's his huddle before it's Jaden Daniels' huddle. You know what I mean? And then you get to the line of scrimmage, and he's just as important in setting the protections and everything like that. And he loves kind of doling out those assignments and everything else. So Brandon, not that he, his football IQ is not in question necessarily, but Nick has been doing this for a lot longer. Obviously, he's got that veteran edge there. And he's got that, the live bullets of doing it in practice and in games. So I think that's where he's got the clear advantage over Brandon Coleman. But we've also seen, in both years, right, that DQ has been here. Like, this coaching staff is not afraid to make changes on the offensive line in season if they feel like the time has come to make those changes.
We're talking to David Harrison, who covers the team for Channel 9 and Locked On, the Locked On Network. So, kind of continuing through the offseason chronologically, we get to free agency, and we've talked a little bit about it already. The Linderbaum thing was really interesting in terms of the percentage increase from the expected. But what do you think was the thing they were disappointed with the most, and what do you think they're most excited about?
I think I would have to think the receiver situation is probably the most disappointing. Obviously you go hard after Alec Pierce, and it was no secret that Alec, his preference was to go back to Indianapolis. The quarterback situation played a big role in his decision. So I think, AP went into that, assuming that those reports are accurate, knowing that there was a chance there, pivoting to Romeo Doubs, taking another swing at it and missing out on him, I think obviously is going to be disappointing. And, I think everybody loves Diami. He was always loved in the building. So I don't think anybody's sad to bring Diami back into the fold. But I think when you go after two guys like that and you come up empty, there's just got to be a natural kind of letdown type of feeling. You have to, for AP in the front office, you got to quickly get over it and move on, or else you're going to lose out on other guys too. And I think for me, if I have to pick where they're probably most excited, I think you have to go front seven, right? Because it's also where they went the most heavy. They went the hardest, right? With Chenal, Amenahue, Chason, Settle, Davidson now, Adafe Owe coming in. They went really hard at that front seven, and then even bringing back Dietrich Wise Jr. I've been talking about this on the show too, because I know we're talking about the drafts coming up, and David Bailey's there, Reuben Bain. I'm looking at this roster, and I'm like, I already see 10 or 11 D linemen that you would probably project on the initial 53-man roster. So if they draft another guy, especially in the first round, he's making it. So who's the odd man out? And obviously the Daron Payne. Well, you could just trade Daron comes up, and until there's real fire there, I don't know that it's necessarily worth diving too much into. But it's going to be interesting to see who they say or see what they do. But I think the front seven, just because of the sheer volume that they've done there, they probably have the most excitement there.
Well, that's interesting that, you're contemplating the idea that if David Bailey was sitting there at 7, and Reuben Bain probably will be sitting there at 7, that they wouldn't take either player. They would, for me, Bailey, if they didn't take him at 7, I'd be very upset, because they have now, with Armstrong coming back, with the addition of Owe, with the addition of Chason and Amenahue, and even John Baptiste coming back, who played early in the year before he also got hurt. Right. Wise coming back. You're like, well, where is he going to fit? Well, he's going to fit because they don't have right now, unless it's Owe, a true scare and offense pass rusher, right?
Right. Yep. No, 100%. Because even Dorrance Armstrong, I know they love him. And I think we can all agree he's on a Pro Bowl pace when he got injured, unfortunately mid-season there. But he's coming off that knee. And every player I've ever talked to coming off of an ACL, really regardless of position, has always told me that first year, they still didn't feel 100% themselves. That second year is really when they started to kind of get their mojo back. And so this is going to be Dorrance's first year. It's also a contract year, so that's a big thing. So, I don't think, like I said, I don't think it takes off I don't think anybody's off the board. I don't want to get to that level of it. But it does make you kind of wonder, where do they really see all these players? They also brought back Drake Jackson, which AP has a lot of faith and hope for his future. So it's a very crowded room. But I think, DQ preaches competition. AP loves competition. And I think all these guys are professionals and understand that nothing is given in this league and everything's earned. So if they bring in David Bailey or Reuben Bain or whoever it is, then, you got, if you're really better than that guy, you just got to go show it.
Real quickly, the player they added yesterday, Davidson, where does he fit in?
Yeah, I got a little bit of background on him from someone who's kind of familiar with why they brought him in. And what was really interesting with that conversation is the mentioning of the expectation, which obviously, we haven't seen it on the field, but of a good 3-man big interior. And I guess kind of the way that I almost envision it is maybe Davidson at the nose and then Settle and Payne kind of bracketing him, Kinlaw, and Wise as your big edge, your big ends type of guys. So a 5-man front. And I know the 5-man front is something that the Vikings used more of last year than they had in previous years. To kind of, for one, they didn't have some of the dynamic edge rushers that they had in the past anyway. But I think that's something, and so this kind of indicates to me that it's something that Durante Jones is planning on bringing over from Minnesota, at least in some way, shape, or form. And again, that kind of goes.
And you're
back
saying
to the
that would be their
big
lineup,
right? That would be their. Yeah, it's not like their base for by any means.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like when
and
they
a
want to go
5-man
big.
front in many ways, especially if you've got a nose tackle and somebody playing zero technique or close to it. I mean, it really, if those two two edges are in a 2-point stance, it's a 3-4 just as much as it's a 5-man front.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that's what, it's just about attacking the gaps, right? At the end of the day is really what it's about. But when you want to get bigger, if the Eagles are coming out and trying to cram Saquon down your throat, counter them with a big guy and some athletic linebackers that can get to the edges and see if that works.
Interesting. Because I think my first reaction when they signed Settle was, if they are in a base 3-4, he's the nose tackle, because I don't think it's Kinlaw or Payne. And who else would they have on the roster? The guy that played, I think, knows more than anybody last year when they were in their 5-man front was Eddie Goldman, actually, of the players they had, and he's not back. So that's interesting about the guy that they just signed, and just the idea of a super big lineup. So, David, where are you on what you think they're thinking as it relates to Brandon Ayuk?
I think that if Brandon Ayuk becomes available, then I feel like he's going to be here. If Brandon Ayuk becomes available, he'll be here. But I don't think Adam Peters is banking on him becoming available. It's one of those, we'll believe it when we see it type of things. I actually asked him about that at the combine. Had to kind of ask it in a weird way so that I didn't get him in trouble for talking about a player under contract. But I think I'm pretty confident he knew where I was going with it. And he basically said the same thing that Jason Light used to tell me when I was covering the Buccaneers, is that you have to operate based off what you know, not what you hope. And right now, what you know is that the 49ers are clearly not in a rush to make Brandon Ayuk available to Washington or anybody else. And so you got to move forward with that knowledge. Yeah,
but he's also not going to play for the 49ers in 2026.
Adam Peters knows that
too. It's going to be interesting, because I would think that, they would have a lot of information on just his mental stability. What about Jawan Jennings? He's still out there. He didn't get the money that he and his agent thought he would get. He's obviously, a guy that would fit the David Blau offense as a number 2 or even a number 3 receiver. Do you think there was any interest in him, but it was just too expensive?
Jawan is interesting because there's actually, so when you look at like the Ben Johnson offense, and you would look at Jawan Jennings as almost like maybe the Keenan Allen, right? And a lot of people, they look at Mike Evans as replacing Jawan Jennings. And the Ben Johnson offense, while there's a role, obviously, like you said, there's a role for that type of receiver. There's not really a feature role for that type of receiver. And like you said, I think Jawan was kind of hoping for that type of a situation. And, I don't know what his side of the conversation is. And this goes for a lot of players, like ego. We all have egos, and egos can be our best friend and they can be our biggest enemy. And I don't know how he's feeling about how the market has unfolded for him. And he might be looking to wait until after the draft to see if one of these teams who wanted maybe Jordan Tyson or one of these other big receivers don't get their guy, and then they come calling and things like that, and just kind of waiting to see how it transpires. To me, it looks like the Commanders' offense is really trying to get a lot faster. And while Jawan can certainly operate down the field, I don't know that he fits that mold per se. And when you look at Alec Pierce, and you look at Romeo Doubs, I think they were going for a little bit more dynamic ability. So I don't know that I think AP was for sure in on Jawan. Wouldn't be surprised, because I think we all kind of expected him to be in on Jawan Jennings. But we'll also see, every day that goes by, like those contracts, can get cheaper. But then when the draft goes by, if you don't get a guy that you wanted, that contract could also get more expensive.
Yeah, real quickly, because you mentioned this early, and I don't know what the outcome of the conversation about Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz was with John. So is there any chance that either one is back?
Yeah, I think the belief right now is that the door is basically open for both of them to potentially come back. Obviously, they've got to make their own decisions. We know the reports that Zach wants to come back. and play again and all those things, and where he fits in that tight end room with adding Chigakonkwo and having those other guys too. I think Bobby, the thing with Bobby that I've kind of wondered aloud is, would he be willing to take on a KJ Wright role? KJ Wright in Seattle was a big mentor to him, but obviously not an every down player, not a feature player in the defense. And I wonder if Bobby would be willing to take on that role on this defense while, Leo Chanel, Jordan McGee, and, who knows if they draft a linebacker or, somebody like Sonny Styles, if he somehow miraculously makes it to number 7, would he be willing to take on that role? I can't tell you. I could see Bobby going either way just from, the media, the player relationship that we have. So I can't tell you one way or another where I think he would go with that. But I think that's probably part of it is, what does the role look like? And is Bobby willing to accept that role in a return?
Where do you think Deebo Samuel lands and when?
Ooh, I don't know. I'm surprised that he doesn't.
It's not going to be back here. Not after.
No.
Bringing Diami, Van Jefferson, and the possibility of another player, for sure. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't see him back in Washington for sure. I don't know that. I don't know off the top of my head like a pure location for him. I think he would be a really interesting fit in Denver with Jalen Waddle and Sutton. And when I know they've got a lot of faith in Franklin, but he's kind of a long, almost like a Juwan Jennings style of receiver, and so they certainly have some room for a potential Deebo style of guy if Davis Webb wants them to do some work with him. But yeah, that would be intriguing. I know the 49ers were a team a lot of people were looking at, but I'm definitely surprised Deebo is still out there. So I'm interested to see where he ends up as well.
I actually am somewhat interested in the possibility that Courtland Sutton gets moved after they signed Waddle.
Really?
And whether or not there'd be interest here in a guy like Sutton. So let's finish with this because it's 3 weeks from tomorrow night. They'll be on the clock at 7. Let's just assume they don't move up. They don't move back. What do you think the best case for them is and that what they're hoping to see be available at 7?
So I think the best case scenario is Sonny Styles at 7. I think Sonny Styles at 7 makes the most sense, gives you the most juice right now, but also for the future. It gives you a future quarterback of your defense, even if it's not year 1. Eventually, he's the quarterback of your defense, and hopefully you get the next Bobby Wagner, from a legacy standpoint. But I don't really have high hopes that he's going to make it. If he gets to the Giants, I feel like they're going to run to the podium, as it is with that ticket. So I think it's 7. Outside of that, honestly, I've started to lean more towards Carnell Tate. I don't have like a final answer yet. Like I said, we're 3 weeks out. But Carnell Tate is someone I just look down the future. And I know DQ and AP were asked similar questions, and they kind of don't really worry too much about that from what they said to us. But right now, like when you look at, the new stadium opening up, there's no receiver that you can look at and say, this guy needs to be the one catching the ball for Jaden. And I think they need to get that figured out, get that tandem of who's going to be the receiver that really kind of runs with Jaden through the majority of his career. And Carnell Tate, while I don't think coming into the league should be a number 1, he doesn't have to be for Washington, at least in 2026, and could potentially, learn behind Terry and do all those things. And by the time he needs to step into those number 1 shoes, he's got a couple of years under his belt as an NFL receiver. And so I think that's the best mix of short-term and long-term solution if they can get that.
All right, last one. Where are you on Jeremiah Love? Like, if I told you they picked offense, Tate or Love, would you prefer Tate over Love or Love over Tate?
Yeah, I would go Tate. I would go Tate over Love, and it's not because I don't think Jordan Love is going to be a great running back. And I'll freely admit too, I was actually having this talk with Mitch Fischler in Phoenix. Like, this might be an oversimplification on my part of this whole thing, but if you can open up the lanes to give Jeremiah Love the room he needs to be effective, you can open up those same lanes for Bill and for Rachaad White. And so I just feel like while he's a better running back in a vacuum than who they have on the roster right now, I think the overall impact on the roster, both current and future, isn't as profound as Carnell Tate could be. So that's why I lean Carnell Tate.
So I'm just noticing you're an Arizona State alum. Are you a big Jaden guy?
I was a big Jaden guy. Yeah, I mean, I am a big Jaden guy. So it's funny because when Jaden got to the team, like, I had a little side conversation with him or whatever. Just mentioned it was like, hey, just, you know, you're going to find out or whatever. It's going to come up at some point in time, but I am an Arizona State grad. And, you know, I don't know what went through his head when I said that, but I just reminded him, like, hey, dude, like, not everybody did you dirty, you know, when you transferred to LSU. And some of us wanted to see you succeed, whether you were in that uniform or a different one.
Yeah, it was
but
tough
you
for
know,
him there yeah.
Yeah, it was really tough, you know.
Not a bad
Yeah.
place to go to school. Tempe's pretty nice most of the year. Thanks, David. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you.
David Harrison, everybody from Channel 9 and the Locked On Network. Sean McVay went down memory lane as it relates to his time here and pitched a former QB to be his backup in LA. You'll hear what he said yesterday next.
Time for an NCAA Final Four spotlight.
Blocked at the summit. Mirkovic and Ibicic were there. Illinois has it. It's
Just into this Eagles story. Jalen Hurts, at least according to this story, not the easiest guy to coach. Oh, man. This is, I guarantee you, Philadelphia Sports Talk Radio, WIP, they have gone through every single quote in this story. Man, the Eagles have become a big-time soap opera, almost like the Cowboys on some level. So Sean McVay, one of the many coaches to talk out in Phoenix earlier this week, was asked about, first of all, he was asked about his time in Washington and he, with all the coaches, and he went on and on about, Kyle and Mike and Matt LaFleur and Mike McDaniel and the whole thing. We know the whole story. And then he got to, one of the reasons and the guy that sort of he kind of came into this thing together with. And then he made a pitch. Here's what he said.
I'll tell you what meant a lot about, just Kirk and I's relationship, though, is it coincided with his first opportunity to really start full time was when I first got an opportunity to call plays. Jay Gruden giving me a chance as an OC and really kind of putting his arm around me and helping me grow. But Kirk and I experienced a lot of kind of first things together. And so there was a real foundational relationship. His success and really the success that we were able to have as a team was instrumental in getting an opportunity to get to LA. So I'm forever indebted to him and guys like Jordan Reed and
Jordan Reed, great tight end.
Jordan Reed was a great tight end. Oh man, I still teach
Gators.
off of his choice and looky routes. He was unbelievable, and he was a blessing to be around. But Kirk was awesome. He's played at a high level. He's a starting quarterback in this league. It's just a matter of what's he looking for, what the situation is, and if there is some interest in us, Kirk, come see us, man. I would love to have you.
Come on now.
I'm telling you, Jordan Reed, anytime his name comes up with anybody who is here and coached with him or played with him, I mean, other than Sean, I'm telling you, Jordan Reed's the greatest what if in franchise history. Hall of Fame talent, no doubt. Just too many concussions. It's interesting about the Rams. They had Jimmy Garoppolo as the backup for Stafford. And remember, this time last year, the Los Angeles Rams weren't even sure that Matt Stafford was going to be back. I mean, there was discussion of potential trade because some of the contract issues they had. Good thing they brought him back. He was outstanding, obviously. But Garoppolo is an unrestricted free agent and not expected necessarily back with the Rams. And the only other quarterback on their roster is Stetson Bennett, the former Georgia quarterback. I could definitely see Cousins landing in LA with Sean. Sean absolutely loves Kirk. Kirk's loved Sean. They have stayed very close over the years. Now, Kirk is still holding out for, a potential opportunity to start. And I think there is a feeling that if, and I don't think this is going to happen, but if Aaron Rodgers were to hang it up, Pittsburgh probably is the spot for Cousins next year to perhaps, mentor a guy like Ty Simpson if they were to pick him in the draft. But Sean McVay has always enjoyed talking about his time in Washington. And, I remember, a couple of those first years with Sean as the OC when Jay gave him those responsibilities. Man, there was a lot of us bitching and complaining about some of the stuff that was called. He was still learning his way. Because he was, remember, the tight ends coach here first with Mike when Mike was the head coach. And then Jay comes in and he becomes the offensive coordinator. But Jay was calling plays. But then, he got involved in calling plays as well. And there was not my memory of this is pretty crystal on Sean McVay. There was one person. Now, in the organization, I think there were several people that knew Sean was talented and destined for something great. But I don't think Dan or Bruce saw it, obviously. But Cooley, I'll never forget it, on the show. I mean, in 2013, he was the tight ends coach. And he said, or 2014, Jay was the coach in his first year as the head coach. And he said, if it were me and I owned the team, I'd elevate Sean McVay next year to head coach. And if Jay wanted to stay on as a part of the group, I'd let him. But I'd hire Sean McVay, because the first time he interviews for a head coaching job, it doesn't matter about his age. They'll hire him on the spot. And I just remember saying to him, well, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense at all. He's a tight ends coach, and he's not even a play calling OC right now. What are you talking about? He said, he was my tight ends coach. He's the smartest, best, most charismatic, communicating guy in the building, and the first team that interviews him will hire him. It doesn't matter. And sure enough, his first interview, he got hired by the Los Angeles Rams in 2017. And, when I had Kirk on the show a month and a half ago, Kirk insists that if Sean had come back in 2017 and hadn't gotten the Rams job, that there was a chance that he would have re-signed here. I pushed the narrative that the money of $53 million guaranteed ended up being $31 million less than what he got in guaranteed money the following year from the Vikings. Got offered $90 million plus by the Jets, and he took the Minnesota money. And I said there was such a massive difference, and he said no, that was an opening number. If Sean were here, we probably would have pushed it to see whether or not they would have negotiated up to something approaching market value. But he was not as offended by the opening offer as he was in 2015 when the team really lowballed him after his first season starting. But I could see him back in LA, and I could see him backing up Matt Stafford. And if Stafford ended up retiring, I could see him being the starter there in 2027. He's 37. Stafford's 38, I think it is, or Stafford's 39. How old's Stafford? Stafford's 2 years older than Kirk. What was Stafford's draft year? 2010? I'm forgetting now. Anyway, all right, we got a few other things to finish up with, including Tiger Woods, who is at least publicly committing to get some help. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So many great tweets and emails following yesterday's open to the show, talking about the new uniforms, name. Of course, the conversation morphed into the name. It's amazing to me. Once again, some of you have just straight out comprehension and listening issues. But the bottom line is, I don't have a problem with any of you who don't care about the name issue or who like the name. You're entitled to that opinion. That's completely up to you. And I think the difference is, I'm not going to lecture you about having the feelings you have about liking the name or not liking the conversation about the name. But when you tell me don't talk about the name because nobody cares about the topic, that's when I draw the line. It's terrible advice for anybody that's trying to attract an audience to the show. And the fact that you actually believe that it's a turnoff to the audience is just a reflection of how detached you are from the audience and the fan base, both past, present, and, on the limb, on the fence right now. I'm not going to stop talking about it. I will say what I've said for the last year or so. I don't love talking about it anymore. It's not the passionate topic, even though I get passionate when I discuss it. I don't feel it the way I used to, because I know that the right answer isn't an available answer. So the fact that Redskins is never coming back makes the conversation for me a little bit subdued and at times a little bit tedious, which would play into the way some of you feel, but it's for a different reason. It's just, I understand how important this is to the majority of the fan base. I do. And if you don't, that's fine. But don't tell us how to feel. By the way, this from Johnny. Johnny writes, why are broadcast personalities still speculating about Bobby Wagner's return to Washington? He was terrible last year, and the team has moved on. Let's drop it. Yeah, he wasn't really terrible last year. He was actually really, really good as a run stopper and as a blitzing pass rusher. Where he wasn't very good for sure was as, someone in coverage, which you don't want to see, at his age. Bobby Wagner dropped into coverage much at all. But no, Bobby Wagner was a good player for the team last year, leading tackler, a tackling machine, fewest missed tackles on a team that had a lot of them. But one of the, sure tackling linebackers in the league for his entire career. And that part of his game really has not dropped off. It really hasn't. If they did bring him back, and I don't expect him to be back, but if he did come back in a new system with Durante Jones, I'd be more curious than upset. Because, why did he play every snap last year? Because he's the smartest player on the field, and he was an effective player on the field, with really a couple of exceptions when somehow he got targeted in coverage. You'd think it'd be easier to keep a player like Bobby Wagner from covering, but sometimes personnel dictates. You've got your personnel, and here comes a personnel grouping where, we're in the wrong personnel grouping. Bobby's going to have to cover somebody on this play. You don't like to see that happen, and I'm sure they tried to minimize the number of times that it happened. But that's the one thing that he doesn't do well. Everything else, that's just a terrible take on Bobby Wagner. He did not stink last year. Just not even close to being he was not terrible last year. The team probably has moved on, but he was not a terrible player last year. All right, I wanted to finish up with just the Tiger story. A week ago, rollover crash, Jupiter, Florida, says that he was, on his phone, took his attention away. Obviously, he was impacted by something. He refused the urinalysis. He took the breathalyzer, passed it. It was not alcohol. I think everybody understands that this is more likely than not a pain medication issue. He's had 7 back operations, 7, and 20 additional operations on his leg alone since the accident in 21. Lots of, thoughts of what's going to happen. I mean, until yesterday, just the possibility that he might play at Augusta next week, it would have created an all-time ratings bonanza for golf anyway, especially on that first day. But he did come out with a statement yesterday that stated the following, quote, "I know and understand the seriousness of the situation I find myself in today. I'm stepping away for a period of time to seek treatment and focus on my health. This is necessary in order for me to prioritize my well-being and work toward lasting recovery. I'm committed to taking the time needed to return to a healthier, stronger, and more focused place, both personally and professionally. I appreciate your understanding and support and ask for privacy for my family, loved ones, and myself at this time." Signed, Tiger. He submitted, or his attorney submitted, a not guilty plea on the misdemeanor DUI and property damage charges. So there's a scheduled hearing, I think, April 23rd. We'll see what happens there. Is it possible this thing goes to trial with him? I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. Like, this is incident number 3. 2017, side of the road, impacted clearly by prescription meds. The accident in 2021, although there was no cause to, cited with respect to any sort of impairment, even though there was a belief that he may have been. And then this time, obviously impaired as well. And even though there's no urinalysis to prove it, not taking the urinalysis, at the very least, the license, I would imagine, would be suspended or revoked. He has said in the past that he likes driving, he likes his privacy, he likes that ability, as Tiger Woods, to be behind. I mean, I kind of get that, right? You're not from a Tiger Woods standpoint, but we all love to have some of that, alone time driving, behind a wheel, listening to music or whatever it is. And for somebody like him, the privacy that you get from that, and I'm sure there are other reasons that he wants the privacy, who knows, or there have been in the past. But he's taking some time away, and, I'm a fan of Tiger Woods. Certainly he has put himself and others at risk with his irresponsible behavior, driving in an impaired state. At the same time, two things can be true simultaneously. He's been irresponsible, and he's very, very lucky that he hasn't hurt somebody else. He's already hurt himself. That last accident was a serious accident that injured him, could have killed him very, very easily. But at the same time, this is a person that clearly has an issue with prescription meds, more likely than not, opioids, pain meds. And that's what I'm guessing with the pain he's had to live through. And hopefully he can find, through recovery, he used a key word there, in that statement, talking about, time for him to recover. So we'll see what kind of treatment facility he goes into. I would have imagined that a judge, if he wasn't going to throw him in jail, would have required that anyway. Hope it works out for Tiger Woods. Yeah. It's been a rough, at this point now, going back to the incident in 2009, when, a 9-iron in the hand of his ex-wife was in the general direction of him and the vehicle that he was in, with all of his infidelity. I mean, it has been quite the turnaround in the story. And at the same time, he's still won a lot of golf tournaments since 2009, including the Masters a few years ago. Look, on tomorrow's show, I'm going to read this entire. I've been reading it during breaks, Max, this story on Jalen Hurts, written by Tim McManus and Jeremy Fowler on ESPN.com. From what I've gotten through, and it's a really long story, you get the idea that there's a lot of frustration in that building with Jalen Hurts, that Jalen Hurts is not easy to coach. Now, he's had multiple offensive coordinators. What we may be learning is maybe the multiple offensive coordinators are in part because he's difficult to work with. Man, he seems like such the opposite. And I remember when he started to play well in Philadelphia, guys like Merrill Reese and others that we've had on from Philadelphia have said all the time, he's a beloved player in that locker room. He is a born leader. Man, you just never know what the truth is. And clearly A.J. Brown wants out because of that. But I'll just mention real quickly, the story begins with that last fourth down in the playoff game against San Francisco. And there are 43 seconds left, and they call timeout, and he comes over, and Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator, is fiddling with his red pen, scanning the play sheet. Hurts is standing in front of him, leaning in to speak to his play caller. Nick Sirianni was nearby listening to the chatter. A few assistants and backup Tanner McKee were within earshot. Patullo addressed Hurts and Sirianni directly, suggesting what appeared to be a play call for a game-deciding fourth down. Sirianni made eye contact with Patullo, then looked at Hurts as if he was open to Hurts's input. A brief deliberation resulted in the simplest of football plans, a play known as 4 verts, which the Eagles had just run on the previous play. But this time, the 49ers were all over it with 3 defenders collapsing on tight end Dallas Goedert over the middle of the field and failed, and the season was over. As one team source recalled, Hurts was the one who recommended 4 verts. Either way, not everyone with the offense was thrilled. One team source said, quote, "I was like, oh my God, this is not happening. We can't run 4 verts," closed quote. Chris Russell's next.